Freedom. What does freedom mean to you? Pause this video and think about it. Freedom is one of our most sacred values. It is the pillar America was built on. But what does it really mean to be free? Can different types of people interpret freedom differently? Philosophers and thinkers have been trying to define liberty since the outset of civilization. Marcus Aurelius, John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, John Stuart Mill, David Hume, and many others played a key role in people's perception of liberty. And from their writings, it is clear that there is no one definition that would satisfy everyone. Liberty is to be discussed in perpetuity. Isaiah Berlin, one of the most renowned philosophers of the 20th century, framed the differences between two perspectives on liberty in a very helpful way, that of positive and negative freedom. So, what are those? Negative liberty is freedom from interference by other people and institutions, like the government. Negative liberty means being able to make choices and pursue goals free from active interference by a force or, threat from these humans or institutions. In fact, America's Constitution and Bill of Rights were written in the language of negative freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to practice religion, freedom to protest, all without government interference. Negative liberty answers the question, what is the area within which you or me or groups of people are left to do what they would like to do without control by other people or institutions. So negative liberty involves a zone of non-interference, right? And the wider the area of negative liberty or non-interference, the wider my freedoms are. But because we live in a civilized society whose main feature is collaboration, the area of non-interference cannot be unlimited, right? We're not hunter-gatherers anymore, hello. So there has to be some kind of interference. Because if there wasn't, we would live in lawless anarchy. And all men could interfere without limit with all other men. So the million-dollar question is, what is the area of non-interference? Where do we draw the line? Is it that of natural laws or natural rights? And what are those rights? We don't know. It's subjective. Everyone has a different idea of where to draw the line. And that is the origination of pretty much all of our arguments. Think of negative liberty as the foundation on which other liberties are built upon, right? So it's great until you find yourself unable to fulfill your potential, unable to achieve your goals due to lack of resources, right? So as a society, we need positive liberty to get things done, to collaborate and build good things and achieve progress. So what is positive liberty? It is the freedom to fulfill your potential, freedom to act upon one's will, to follow your dreams, build the life you want for yourself. It is the ability to achieve your goals regardless of who may or may not interfere with those. It's the desire for self-determination, self-direction, independence, competence, will to self-master, to autonomy. So if you lack the ability to take an action, such as travel, receive certain type of education, eat the food you want, your positive liberty is restricted because you can't do what you want to do. But guaranteeing positive liberty, like education, like healthcare, requires making someone else provide it. Well, who would that be? A lot of the times, it's the government, right? And so, positive liberty answers the question, what is the source of control which can prevent someone from what he wishes to do? Like, who is to govern me, right? It could be liberal governance system, it could be oppressive governance system, But the question is, who is it? Who determines if you get or don't get positive liberty? As I described previously, different regimes grant people different types of liberties. Early on in America, for example, it was only white men who owned property that had full liberty. African Americans had no liberty at all at first. And then negative liberty was granted to them through the abolition of slavery. But what was it good for if they couldn't fulfill their potential? And so several decades later, they were granted positive liberty through the 14th and 15th Amendment and other laws that allowed them to own property, to make a business, to vote, to get educated. In the current political environment, political left says that we need to make everyone free by redistributing wealth and helping the poor ones achieve their potential by giving them free education, healthcare, dividends. But the right says that this means taking away someone else's property through taxes, and giving it to someone else. So one person's freedom is being compromised for another person's freedom. Everybody can't seem to be free at one time. Can everyone be free at the same time? Does absolute freedom exist? What you realize is that freedom is always in fight with safety and stability. If people choose too much of the latter, you have an autocracy, where one man deprives other people of their freedoms. So would you rather live in a stable autocracy where life is consistently bad, or would you rather live in a chaotic democracy where some days are good and some days are bad and change is the only constant? Let's take the example of communism. Communists said only they knew what was best for people, and therefore did not need permission or consent. The following is an argument that's used by pretty much every dictator, so watch out. They say, I must do for men what they cannot do for themselves, and I cannot ask for their permission or consent because they are in no condition to know what is best for them, and what they will permit and consent to may mean their suicide. So if anyone tells you that, do not believe them. In Czechoslovakia, communists were selling positive freedom. You're free to work, they said. You free yourself through labor, they said. The free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Freedom requires abolishing class differences altogether. No more wage workers, no more shareholders, just people working in a society based on collective democratic control of resources. Well, positive freedom was also reflected in the creation of free compulsory education and public health system in communism. The reality was, however, very different. Education was just another word for propaganda, and hospitals were like medieval butcher shops. No exaggeration. The only people who benefited in communism from these positive freedoms were loyalists, who did not shy away from betraying their friends and colleagues for personal benefits like promotion, higher salary, or bonds, which were vouchers available only to devoted communists, which could be exchanged for foreign goods like jeans, fancy candy, cosmetics, electronics, and cars. So let me illustrate different perspectives of freedom in communism on my family. My grandparents from my mother's side, let's call them the blacks, were blue-collar workers who didn't care about politics, didn't have any ambitions. Their life was very simple, and all they wanted was to be left alone, spend time with their friends and family. My grandparents from my father's side, let's call them the Beats, were kulaks, or landowners, whose land was taken away from them by the communists after World War II. They were immediately blacklisted, which meant they couldn't get educated, right? No positive freedom to education. They couldn't get the jobs they wanted. They usually had the worst manual jobs possible in remote areas, so they couldn't influence others with their ideas. And they were spied on by the secret police, STB. And the secret police had thousands of agents who were collecting information, arresting opposition, and enforcing the communist terror. How did the freedoms of these two families differ in communism, and what was their perception of liberty? Let's look at freedom from thinking, or freedom to think. My grandmother Jane Black didn't like thinking, and in a way wanted to be freed from it. She mentioned she appreciated that communists took care of all the paperwork, taxes, energy contracts, employment contracts, whereas these days in a democratic country, one has to do their own taxes, choose which energy provider is best, and check if the contract is okay. And that's too much work and energy that could be spent on her friends and family. Going to the grocery store was simple back in the days. You didn't have to think what to get because the shelves were always empty. And rationing of food was very common. You were given what to eat. Interestingly, my grandmother Black found it easier as she didn't have to think about which product is best to buy. Nowadays, she feels overwhelmed going to the supermarket, which has endless products with different flavors and prices. Making a choice is very time and energy consuming. For my grandfather Beats, critical thinking, reason, and conscience were an important part of his life. If the main pillar of the communist system is living a lie, then it is not surprising that the fundamental threat to it is living the truth. This is why it must be suppressed more severely than anything else. And my grandfather Beats hated it because he wanted to live in truth. He loved to think, and when he went to high school, he was curious and wanted to explore different concepts, had various questions. And as you know, the regime was built on a lie. And they hated when someone asked questions that could uncover those falsities. As expected, my grandfather was expelled from school before he could graduate. The Black's family enjoyed the freedom from thinking, whereas the Beats family wanted freedom to think and pursue the truth, which was always suppressed. Let's look at freedom to time. Communism also afforded everyone the same amount of time outside of work. Everyone was free from work on the weekends because work was banned, literally. The family of Blacks appreciated the fact that everyone had the same amount of free time, which created a community that you don't see nowadays. People are busy. They could host barbecues with their neighbors, dance and sing songs that the communists gave green light to, and for those who were members of the party, attend exclusive events and shop at Tuzex, a store with Western goodies. The higher you were up the chain, the more opportunities you had with your free time. On the other hand, the weekend for a family of Kulaks was pretty simple. Sit at home and watch TV or go to the garden. Just stay away from anyone to not cause any inconvenience. No neighbors wanted to hang out with you because they could be found guilty of associating themselves with kulaks. As a kulak, you have to be careful with who you spend time with, as anyone can report you for anything. And because there's no presumption of innocence and due process, you can go to jail for literally just being. So free time meant time spent in agony and surviving to the next week. Let's look at freedom to work. The communist concept of positive freedom also included the freedom to work. No one was unemployed. No one was homeless. Communists would always create work as they wished, regardless of market forces. That's why the state bureaucracy was so inefficient and complex. They just kept creating jobs. The absence of unemployment gave my grandmother Black security, that she would not have to worry about finding a job. And communists would find it for her. And she didn't really care that much what the job was, as long as she got paid. My grandfather Black worked in a factory and accepted an offer from the communists to join the party, which meant promotion and high salary, but also responsibility to report on people. Obviously, he didn't like that part, but the money was worth it for him, and he was willing to sacrifice his morality. My grandfather from the Beats family was one of the most ambitious, driven, and curious men who wanted to make a great life for himself. Because my grandfather was a kulak, he was sent to a remote factory to work some manual job. It was lonely and hard, and money wasn't good. He was being watched at all times and couldn't make a move without an STB agent breathing on his back. He could never fulfill his potential. He could never get the job he wanted and become the person he was meant to be. So communism gave the black families security of employment, stability of income, and even promotion and bonus without much effort, right? Just signing a piece of paper. It gave them the positive freedom to work. Conversely, my grandfather Beats didn't feel communism gave him positive freedom, as he could not fulfill his potential. He could not do the work he wanted to and was very much capable of doing. My grandparents, blacks, were not unhappy in communism because communists took care of everything for them. They didn't have to think, they didn't have to make tough decisions, their life was lined up according to the communist ideology. As long as they complied with the rules, they could live their life in relative peace. They didn't have much ambition, and any job was good for them. They appreciated the stability communism provided. They didn't care about free speech, free religion, freedom to protest, and so never had any issues with the regime or the police. They felt communism gave them negative freedom. Most importantly, because of the communists' strict working hours, they had more time for their friends and family. And because everyone had the same salaries, they didn't feel that they were at the bottom of the social hierarchy. They felt valued. They felt equal. My grandparents' Beats had a very different experience. They had no positive or negative freedom. They could not speak freely, go where they wanted to, travel, work the jobs they wanted, get educated, and most importantly, live in dignity and self-respect. I love both of my grandparents very much. And even though my position towards communism is very much on the negative side, it's important to recognize that different people have different values and priorities, and not judge them for it. We're all human beings, and we all want to feel valued and accepted. I hope this video helped you understand different perspectives on freedom and helped you think about what matters to you and what values are important in your life. Thank you.